the political climate is reflecting in music, and because of that, identity politics is so heavy that people see supporting a musician as something about their personal identity and a reflection on them rather than the bigger picture. So people don't feel as inclined to go, well, it doesn't affect me, but it might affect other people if I go and support this shitty guy. Whereas now it's more like, well, I believe this, so because I believe this, that means it's true. And it's the same with, you look at the current political climate and social climate. Identity politics is a huge factor of our interactions now and what we believe and what we stand for, and it's just bleeding into music.
Well, welcome to the Drown in Sound podcast. This is a slightly different episode this week, where I've brought in a pair of podcasters who I've referenced at least 3 times on the series. Their episode digging into the depths of Marilyn Manson's crimes, because I was so emotionally engaged in the commentary that you did around it. So we'd like to begin by introducing yourselves. And it is Sunday, and I am wearing almost all black.
I'm Yasmin, and I am one half of On Wednesdays We Wear Black.
And I'm Sophie K.
And you're also another half of...
And I'm also the other half of On Wednesdays We Wear Black. I don't know, I thought that was obvious. It's a half.
You could have been some random stranger. I don't know.
And you guys are both music journalists and do various other things outside of your podcast. Do you want to give a quick 30 seconds on the other things that you do, just so that people got a bit of context who you are?
Sure. So I work in digital media. I run social media accounts for brands and other people. I also have my own internet presence, which is chaotic and silly. And I write. I have wrote books. I write articles. I interview bands. I make content for the internet, and I talk about music in the space that I'm in, and have done a lot of work to make sure that the spaces that we have in music are diverse and inclusive and represent everybody, because a lot of times they haven't.
That's good, apart from the fact that you missed out award-winning
digital media specialist and award-winning podcaster.
There we go.
There you go. That part, yeah.
Yasmin is slaying. And for me, I have worked in radio and telly in all different worlds, but I started in rock and metal a little bit later on, probably early 2010s to late 2000s, and I worked on everywhere from Scuzz. I'm on Kerrang Radio right now and Absolute Radio, but I'd just like to clarify that any opinions in this podcast are all my own, and they're not affiliated with any of the brands that I work with.
Whereas Emma, all of your opinion...
Just so I don't get myself in trouble.
We're also joined by Emma Wilkes, because for anyone listening, you won't be able to see the other face in the room. Emma, are all of your opinions affiliated with Drown in Sound?
Well, I mean, I've not thought about it too much. I am still freelance at the end of the day, so I suppose that's kind of an open question. But anyway, I'm thrilled that we've managed to get this amazing crossover of worlds on the podcast, because I've known Yasmin and Sophie for quite a while and absolutely love everything they do. So I'm thrilled that we've actually been able to make this happen and get us all together in the digital room, but a room nonetheless.
Room nonetheless.
So today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about what justice looks like, because I think, and what accountability feels like, because I think that they're recurring topics from at least the episodes of your podcast I've heard, amongst the very, very funny ones, and the times where you go deep into MySpace fashion, which I enjoyed immensely a few weeks ago. I think that the rock scene at the moment feels quite like an outlier, and in many ways, I think you mentioned recently that it's probably at like the peak of its powers again, of like its kind of sales and reach and audience. Emma's been writing some bits for Drown in Sound about kind of where rock music is at the moment, and I was just curious, do you feel like rock music has self-awareness of some of its bigger issues, and do you think it has the kind of tools it needs to hold people accountable?
That's a massive question. I don't think rock has changed. I think it's always been a reflection of where society is at, but doing it with extreme gusto. And I think that's what rock does really well. And I think at the moment we're living in a society which is so divided, right wing, left wing. And I feel like we're seeing that reflected a lot in music and in bands, but also, does it have the power to do things about it? I think since the power went from magazines and journalists and people with a lot of integrity in that sense and went on to social media, which is completely unregulated. I could go on there and just say anything. And I think, yeah, rock has very little they can do about it. And the people that do are only driven by money. So that's my opinion.
I agree. No, I completely agree with Sophie. And I'd say as well that the infrastructure for the music industry in general is a made-for-profit system where, you know, you've got artists like Chappell Roan talking about how she doesn't have health insurance, musicians don't have a pension. I know so many artists that have been on the covers of mega big like mainstream magazines and still work part-time jobs because they can't pay their bills. And it's like the infrastructure of the music industry is always been a made-for-profit thing. It's always been a take what you can and run away with it, like the Monopoly man running away with the money bags. But I do think, you know what, social media has been a double-edged sword for the music industry. It gave the power to the people, but because it was unregulated, that power, people have got power hungry and they've got almost like a chip on their shoulder, and people love to say that they were right and they cancelled something before anybody else did, and it's taken away the seriousness of the situation and the actual weight of trying to hold someone accountable, because it feels like every day I open an app and someone's getting cancelled for something that literally doesn't even matter when there's actual big issues going on in the world.
Because I think that I absolutely love what you had to say there. I think it makes so much sense, this idea that we kind of in this industry with such a lack of, I mean, obviously like a lack of infrastructure is what you were saying, but there's also like a lack of regulation, and then that sort of, we're not even necessarily self-regulating either, because it's a bit of a wild west, and it's as you said, governed by profit and stuff. But I just think about it as well, especially in the context of things like abuses of power, sexual misconduct, etc., is that how much that lack of structure, that sort of that system kind of permits it to happen. Because I think about it in like this, like if you had somebody in any other workplace who was committing acts of sexual misconduct, something would be done about it. You'd go to HR. You would hope, in a just world, obviously there's far more complicating that the person perpetrating these things would be fired. They would not be able to work again. And in the music industry, we don't really have anything like that. And I think there was sort of, I feel like there's kind of been people trying to sort of build those sort of impromptu structures, and that's all it's almost ends up being those sort of trial by social media type deals, sort of this idea of trying to people banding together to try and replace a structure that should be working for them that isn't there. And I think that can, and then I think the lack of that as well is also maybe why I remember reading Ian Winwood's amazing book Bodies, in which he talked a little bit about this issue, and he basically said that the idea of us all being, a lot of the people in the industry being self-employed as well, means that we don't necessarily have that person to go to if they were, say, to be a victim of something like that. And there's also, it maintains that culture of silence as well, in the way that people feel afraid to come forward when these things have happened because of fear that they might lose work. And I think it's kind of all connected there.
And maybe this is the cynicism that I have of doing this for a couple of years now. Not that long though, but doing this for a couple of years now. The cynicism that I have is, you know, you gave the example of if this happened in a workplace, HR would deal with it, but HR only deals with it now because there's so much women in the workforce that men can be held accountable and there would be a lawsuit. But like, what, 30-40 years ago, men still got away with sexual harassment in the workplace because there weren't enough women or people saying, hey, you shouldn't do that, and hey, we're going to sue you, and it being taken seriously. And I think the same can be applied to the music industry, where it's 40 years behind in terms of like its ethical and moral conundrums, because I think, you know, then the more voices you have in the scene shouting about it, the more that people actually kind of pay attention. But there's also this infrastructure for the music industry where if you want to hold someone accountable, you risk losing your own job and your own kind of status, and you risk losing the spaces that you've built, the positive spaces that you've built, trying to call out someone negative who ultimately doesn't give a shit either way.
That makes so much sense as well. But as behind as the industry is as well, does it feel like in a way that we've gone backwards? Because looking at this Marilyn Manson tour, I mean, Marilyn Manson toured, he played a couple of shows over here in February, and now he's coming back to play more like arena shows starting from Halloween. And then literally just a few weeks later, Brand New are playing. Something that actually that situation generally did sort of feel for a while. They went away. It seemed like the band was done after Jessie Lacey, their singer, responded to these allegations of sexual misconduct. It feels like they went away and people kind of put it, oh, okay, that's done. Their career is done. And now that they managed to thinking that lying low is helping them and they're coming back and there's clearly like demand for it as well. Does it feel like to you that, are we always been on this difficult terrain, or does it feel like that we were getting somewhere and now we've moved backwards?
I want to yap badly, but I can tell that Sophie's got something to say. So Sophie, you don't have anything to say? Have I just put you on the spot?
I mean, I've always got something to say, but I'm just listening. But I can add something if you want me to.
I was going to say, I'm going to go on a yap fest. I am so polite. It's because we're around other people. Usually I'm rude as fuck to you if we're in real life.
And as well, we often disagree.
Oh God,
which is a good thing. So that's why I like to listen to Yasmin's opinion, because like the different generations and the different eras that we grew up in, I think change our opinions on a lot of things. But yes, please do yap, Yasmin.
With the Jessie Lacey and all that, and when it comes to holding accountability in music and towards musicians, I think kind of like what Sophie said, we're in this the political climate is reflecting in music, and because of that, identity politics is so heavy that people see supporting a musician as something about their personal identity and a reflection on them rather than the bigger picture. People are selfish. People have been selfish, especially after the pandemic. People got incredibly selfish. People were happy to let others get, sick and die because they were like, well, I want to have fun. And we've become incredibly selfish. But I'd say that identity politics now more than ever are so prevalent in the music industry because people feel like if it doesn't affect them, then they don't care. So people don't feel as inclined to go, well, it doesn't affect me, but it might affect other people if I go and support this shitty guy. Whereas now it's more like, well, I believe this, so because I believe this, that means it's true. And it's the same with, you look at the current political climate and social climate. Identity politics is a huge factor of our interactions now and what we believe and what we stand for. And it's just bleeding into music. And I think we definitely... I wouldn't say music has gone backwards. I just say it's currently reflecting the times. I always like to say the pendulum swings one way or the other way. You look at the start of the 2010s and it felt very progressive. Like we had Ellen DeGeneres and Obama and yay, gay people, woohoo! And now, the start of the 2020s, it's like, oh shit, we did an Uno reverse. And the pendulum is swinging back and forth, and it will slowly once again turn back to the left once we get sick of capitalism and autocracy, but it might not. We might be stuck here forever, guys. But yeah, Sophie, I don't know if you have anything to add or if you disagree with me.
No, I agree with you, but I guess the thing is, maybe this is just how my brain works, and this is where I sometimes get myself into trouble, because I think sometimes with the way I hate where cancel culture is at. I absolutely disagree with it. I think what it started as and the movement it started as was so powerful and so important. But this whole cancelling somebody because my auntie's girlfriend's dog said that you once cheated on your girlfriend, absolutely not. I think that's we're not here to be judge and jury as an audience. But one of the things I'm curious about, and this comes from, because at the moment I'm actually on my journey studying to become a counsellor, and so I think a big part of that is understanding human psyche. There's two parts that I was going to say. Number one being that when you get 20-year-olds are idiots. Absolute idiots. I was an idiot. Every teenager, 20-year-old is an idiot. Young 20-year-old males, especially growing up in the 90s and the noughties, which was so jock-like, and it was like Stifler from, I don't know if you see American Pie. I don't know if you other two have seen American Pie, but he was an icon. Like, that what was seen as cool. It was portrayed in films that if I grew up thinking that to date somebody, you had to say no loads of times to get them to push you to say yes. That's how you get someone to like you. And this was bombarded. We learned from TV and things like that how to be. I'm not defending this behavior at all. I'm just trying to get into the thick of it and question it. But like, when you put 20-year-olds in a band, they're idiots. They're driven by hormones. They're surrounded by other dudes because it's a misogynistic industry. Their only females they're interacting with are these young women. There's gonna be, that's like putting a match to petrol and going, it'll be fine. And I think we've called out a lot of bands, and now I'm like, what safety protocols are labels putting in? What safety protocols are management putting in? Like, these are the grown-ups in the situation. These are the adults. And we are having conversations now where young men are growing up and learning about it. But we're seeing that because of all of that, a lot of men are turning the opposite way. And so that is what really intrigues me. But also the idea of, and I don't have the answer to this, I'm just putting the question out there. When you fucked up, at what point does sorry no longer count? Like, at what point, if you say sorry, which Jessie, I'm not defending Brand New, I've got no skin in the game, not a fan of the band. At what point is, and I don't know where that is. I don't know whether, and I don't mean just Jessie, I mean anyone.
Well, you've literally gone to my next question.
Right.
Which was, what does justice look like? Because I think that going back to, I think it was something Emma said a second ago around, like, someone's done one thing and then the fans still go to the shows. Like, I keep hearing, oh, well, they weren't arrested. And it's like, then you look at the statistics of justice around almost any crime, but especially sexual crimes. It's like 0.5 to 1% of people that were even charged in the first place. Like, most people don't, like, the numbers of the statistics are shocking. And we went through quite a lot of them in the episode with Eliza Hatch from Cheer Up Love. And I think that people can go, oh, well, I wasn't aware. Like, that's what some of the Chris Brown fans were saying this summer in the videos from the newspaper in Scotland went viral. Like, people can say, well, I wasn't aware, they weren't arrested, so it's okay. Or they've not gone to prison, it must be okay. Which is a complete denial of just like how bad the justice system is. And like you said, like, yes, people should atone, apologize, like those kinds of things, but also their actions. Like, what are they doing to show that, oh, okay, the profits from this tour are going to go to, or we're gonna have these organizations at the shows to try and improve things for the music industry, or we've had these meetings with all of our team and we want to use this moment of people putting the spotlight on us to kind of help support organizations which are doing amazing things. Like, those are the things that should be part of the pathway back. But it feels like, I don't know, you've seen Russell Brand being baptized by Bear Grylls, and that seems to be the way that some men find their absolution. But yeah, I guess that is really like, what does the path to returning look like? Because like you, I don't think that cancel culture really exists. It primarily exists for whistleblowers. I mean, just look at Amber Heard's career compared to Johnny Depp's.
Yeah.
It exists for people who are not in the positions to hold power. Like, I think some of those movies you referenced, like American Pie, like, I think that was made by Weinstein at a time when there were already allegations flying around. So it's like, all of these things are interconnected. So yeah, what should it look like? What is the path forwards?
You know, it's interesting because when we talk about cancel culture, it makes me kind of sad because cancel culture actually started out in the early 2010s, maybe like late 2000s, on the early iterances of the internet because of the Me Too movement and because of the first kind of big online rally for Black Lives Matter during like the early 2010s. And it originally started as a way to hold people in positions of power accountable for their actions and take away the resources that they use to abuse their power. And I think it's been weaponized by right-wing extremists to, take away seriousness of situations and to dispel any kind of, movements towards progressiveness. And now it's just seen as this like annoying thing that oh god, someone's getting cancelled again, and no one takes it seriously. And it's sad because we talk about justice and we talk about what that looks like, and I think for me, it's different for every situation. It's situational, firstly, and I don't have the answers because I'm not a judge, but I will say I think it's important to look at the situation as like what access to what resources does this person have to abuse their power? How did they abuse their power? Do they still have access to those resources? Are they still able to use the means that they did have to begin with to abuse their power and continue to do that? And I'd say with musicians who have huge platforms who've abused their power, who are still performing, yeah, you still have the exact same resources. Like I thought about Brand New, and I genuinely, it made me sad a little bit because I was like, well, he was accused of all of that and being weird to underage girls allegedly, and I thought there's going to be so many underage girls going to his shows, and it's like what, like, how are we preventing this man from like doing the same again? Like what kind of structures are in place to make sure that doesn't happen? Is it an 18+ show? Like what's happening there? And I think when we talk about justice, it's more about like what power does this person have and how do we stop them from abusing it further? And some people, need to be rehabilitated. Some people can't be rehabilitated. But yeah.
See, I think that individualizes the problem. And I think that's one of the biggest issues and why we will never change as a society until we start looking at it as a societal problem rather than this evil individual. What an outlier they are. Like, I feel like we have to just look at it as a whole. And again, as I say, because and not to disagree, because I also agree with you, Yasmin. This is the hard thing about this topic, is like I agree, but also where I it's almost like, well, rather than where are we holding the labels accountable? Where are we holding the management teams accountable? Where are we holding every single person that was backstage accountable? Because I'll tell you what we do as human beings, we celebrate narcissism. It's what we do. Like, there was this I was listening to something with Gabor Mate, and he was talking about how in indigenous culture, American indigenous culture perhaps, I'm not quite sure, but he was saying about how the celebration and the wealth in society was how much you gave back. So the person that was celebrated is the person that is kind and volunteers, whereas today in society, thanks to capitalism, we celebrate people who are narcissistic. Like, and that is standard. So you put narcissistic people in these positions of power, that's what's going to happen. So what are the people that are grown and backstage doing about all of this?
That's so true.
Like this goes beyond Brand New.
That's
this goes
so
beyond Brand
true.
New.
Like, it's so easy to individualize the problem. I guess I didn't see it that way. You're right. Oh my god, gag it. You're right. It's so easy to individualize the problem, but like, who was facilitating? Like, who's booking Brand New right now? Who's the people that allowed him to talk to those underage girls? Who was on the tour buses while he was doing that? Who like was booking the tours? And do you know, I think about this all the time when bands are like, when bands are accused of being weird to girls backstage, well, where was the tour manager? Where was the guy driving the bus? Where was security? Where was the merch people? Where was their photographer? Where was the rest of the band? Like, it's not...
They'd get fired, Yasmin. That's the thing. They'd all get fired.
Yeah.
Like, if you call out a band that are big and powerful, you just get fired.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wake up, you're replaced. Same with journalists, and that's the problem with taking away the power of journalism.
And especially as well when, I suppose that's the thing, when there are legal frameworks that also you have to sort of work with and get around when it comes to actually bringing these things to light, because there is always that fear of somebody retaliating, coming after you with a lawsuit as well. But yeah, I think you've elaborated, I think, in a way that's actually really illuminating for me to sort of put that in context as well, into how systemic everything is.
May I add one thing though? I think we're focusing on the problem a lot, and I think every new generation that comes in will see the problem as it is today, and the problem is they don't see the growth that's happened from the generation before and the generation before and the generation before. And I think sometimes, because it's moving a juggernaut. It's not something that you're going to snap your fingers. And I'm not saying we're in an okay place, but I do feel like we need to take a moment to celebrate, because I'll tell you now, when I was going to uni in like the noughties, in the noughties, you would not come forward about rape. You would be laughed at. Laughed at by, I know one of my friends went to the police and she was asked what she was wearing, all these types of questions. And when people are saying believe her, they are normally referring to that came from that culture of how brutal it was. And so today, we've grown. I think a lot of women, a lot of people in general, if they were sexually assaulted by someone, would come forward now. I really feel like it's changed. Not everybody feels empowered, but the fact we're even having this conversation, if you'd had this conversation and Sean, I don't want to make assumptions, but I assume you remember the noughties.
Mm-hmm.
If you,
I'm 42, I very much do.
If we had this conversation in, I don't know, mid to late noughties,
yeah,
we would be laughed at.
But Kurt Cobain was trying to have this conversation in the 90s.
Yeah, 100%. Iggy Pop was trying to have, all of these people are trying to bring this. We actually did an episode.
Iggy's maybe not the best example with some of the things that he's confessed to.
Yeah, so I was just about to say, look at the lyrics of Look Away.
Yeah.
See, that's the other thing is, where do we take... This is a genuine question. This isn't me defending anyone. Where... I think sometimes we can get a bit, can we celebrate the good someone's done?
Yeah.
And if we do, does that mean we're do we have to cancel them and not celebrate any good that they've done because of
going back to Yasmin's point? How does the pendulum of a person swing the other way? Because if someone is atoning, surely that should be the ultimate of what we'd expect to see.
But I know for a fact that PRs will tell you not to, because we wouldn't be talking about Jesse Lacey had he not apologised so vehemently. The story would have disappeared and dissipated, and because he apologised, that he's getting listed up there with blooming Ian Watkins or whoever, and he is not on that level. What he did was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It felt really rare as well, actually, for somebody like Jessie Leslie coming forward and apologising for something because most of the time it ends up getting denied and it ends up turning into this battle of this person's opinion, this person's recollection of events versus this person's recollection of events, or somebody who does the whole Darvo thing, which is, if you're not familiar, for anybody listening, a strategy is to deflect from allegations, which is deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. I feel that's so much more common. It actually genuinely felt for a moment like it was the exception to what had generally happened. Whereas you get that, and then you get people it's then the situation becomes a lot less clear cut, because there will be people who will take the alleged perpetrator's words at face value, and then there are other people who will be more skeptical about it. But then I suppose with Brand New, that was it went away from that. But then it genuinely felt like that they were done, and they sort of retreated away, and it did feel like they weren't going to come back. So it almost made it feel even more like a bit of a gut punch when they did, as if they thought that lying low could have been enough.
That's what gets me, Emma. You're right. That's what gets me. And this is what confuses me. When he apologised and left, it was cool, yeah, man, okay, you did wrong, going off, you're going to go work on yourself, yeah. I wonder, and I ask myself, okay, now you're back, what have you put in place to make sure the same doesn't happen again? What protections have you put in place to make sure that the same is not repeated? What are we doing to make sure that you are safeguarding your fans, the people who are coming to see you, who the last time that they came to see you, you abused your power and spoke to them when they were underage in inappropriate situations and made them uncomfortable. So what are we doing this time around to make sure it's different? Because then it holds up. If he was actually, and this is maybe a controversial opinion, if he was yep, we're donating this amount of profits to X, Y, and Z, we have strict policy backstage, no one's allowed to do this, no one's allowed to do that, 18 plus this, 18 plus that, I'd be okay, you're actually putting safeguardings in place, you learnt your lesson, I don't forgive him for what he did, it was still morally wrong, but a part of me is but you're still actively trying to make a progress, but like just coming back, and I think it's because he's seen, and this is happening with a lot of bands. Bands are seeing that actually, even when you do wrong, you can still come back. You just got to give it a few years. Got to let it simmer down, and then come back in a few years. And it's like, I don't think that's. I hate that that's the precedent that's been set, because we'll see more bad bands come back who were deeply problematic, but they'll be like, we said sorry once. And it's like, okay, but like, what are you actually doing in the present day to make sure that that doesn't happen again? Like, what safeguarding measures are being put in place? And that's the thing with Brand New. If he came back and was like, here's all the safeguarding measures we've put in place, here's all the work I've done over the past X, Y, and Z to change who I am as a person, and had a complete 360, I'd be like, okay, like, that's okay. Like, it's not really, I still probably wouldn't support them, but like, I couldn't fault them for that.
Do you think that in the media coverage, though, that the allegations and what they've been accused of, people should be reminded? Because for instance, I read a review of, is it Jay Tillman? I forgot his name, the guy from Rammstein.
Till Lindemann.
Rammstein.
He's also touring again soon.
Yeah, he toured in December, and I read a review, and it made a vague mention of it. I think it was in the Telegraph. I think it was the only place that reviewed it. Which speaks for itself, that one of the most far-right papers in the country, it's not far-right, but the furthest to the right, newspapers, was one of the few places that reviewed a big show at Wembley Arena. And maybe it did get reviewed in the rock press, but it wasn't online. I just wonder to what extent that it should be part of the discourse. Like Queen's the Stone Age tour now, and it's never mentioned that he assaulted a photographer, and a lot of the allegations around things from stuff with his kids, and it's like, and also a whistleblower who spoke up online who had heavies come to her door because she was siding with Brody Dell from the Distillers, who are a revered band that people like. There seemed to be a like, oh no, they're back and they're headlining big events and things, and it's like, I don't know, I found it odd to see people that I see speak up quite a lot, speaking about how great the shows were, and I was like, there's no caveat, there's no like. So I just wonder whether you feel that like part of the accountability is it being mentioned. Is that something which journalists and broadcasters and media could be doing more of?
I mean, when it pertains to the part that it played in abusing their power in that position, then yeah, I feel like as a journalist, you got to tell the full picture. Why take out the meat of it? Like, if you're going to give an unbiased, completely like solid review, you kind of have to mention it. And I very much stand with journalists being honest. Like, I hate that we, as music journalists in particular, have to be super PG about everything and super nice and say that we like things that we definitely don't fucking like, but we have to be like, we have to like this album because it's the people who look after this band also look after this band that we actually really want to work with, so we'll pretend to be nice about this album so then they let us work with the one that we actually want to work with. And it's the industry politics, which sucks, but no, I do think journalists have a duty to mention whatever, if it pertains to their career and them abusing their power in their career and abusing the power that they had while they were on stage or in that position, and it's relevant to the review, then yeah, I'll say. And it's like the journalist in me is like, if it's relevant to what you're talking about, then yeah, mention anything. But Sophie, I don't know if it's different. Am I just talking at my ass, Sophie?
No, I just think for a gig review, I just think it's a bit heavy for a gig review. I don't know. There's part of me that's like, we have to remember that we are all quite liberal from my guess, but we're all quite extreme liberal in that sense. And then you get extreme right, and then I think a majority of people sit in the middle where they don't actually care about all this stuff. They just want to have a nice day, and they just want to have a nice time. They just want to listen to the music they want to listen to. I don't know. I don't know where I sit with it all.
I do think a brief line about it is important though, just for transparency's sake. Like, if you're gonna even talk about someone and they've been in the news recently for something really bad, it's worth mentioning of like, hey, we're reviewing this thing. This guy, you might know from this infamous thing, but he also did this gig and we're gonna talk about it. And you can still have an unbiased review, but mention that like, this really infamous guy is doing a gig, kind of thing. I don't know, maybe that's just me, maybe I'm wrong for that.
I guess the relevance is that like with the Rammstein stuff, it happened at the shows, like, and that to me was the bit where it seemed relevant. I mean, it was mentioned, but it was such a like it was almost like casting aspersions over the allegations, which I guess is one way of doing allegedly, but another way of saying there's not been anyone, there's not been any legal charges, kind of a vibe. I guess it's like, where is the role of the journalists to be part of the accountability process? Because like, it's not that the shows are not going to go ahead. Like, and I'm like, should journalists be involved in trying to fix all the systemic problems, or should they just be there that they're aware enough so that other people know that there's systemic problems to be addressed? I guess is where my mind goes quite a lot, because I think if you're not aware of the problems, or if you're ignorant to the problems, or if you want to just wipe the problems away, how do you go back to that process of trying to address the system?
See, I'm sorry to shake my head while you were talking. That's very rude. I hate it when people do that. But the problem is for journalists, and I think this is what a lot of people don't understand on social media a lot of the time when we get criticised. It's, so let's say, I don't know, I'm not going to name any band, because unless it's proven or whatever it might be, I don't want to dance that whatever the tightrope is.
You don't want me to face the legal problems of publishing your opinion.
Yeah.
So basically, let's say you've got band A, and they've got allegations. People are calling out the journalist to call out band A, but what they don't realise is that band B, C, D, E, F, G are all on the same either label or management or whatever it might be. And with people not supporting media and a proper journalistic voice and becoming shallow and using social media in the way they do, it means that media doesn't have the power that it did once have. So if they say that, all of a sudden they don't get all of those bands, which means they don't get the same coverage, which means they don't get the same sponsorship deals, and then it means that we'll start seeing more media die, and that's the last thing we need.
Does that sound like cancel culture?
Yeah, so it means that that's the thing, is I feel like the people with the money and the power in the world are able to cancel whatever they want. And we have to support journalistic integrity. We have to support I don't think it will ever happen that the power will go back to media, unfortunately. I know it sounds very depressing, but that's a stronger place to be than where we're at now.
No, I agree.
I suppose with the point that you made is I don't think there's necessarily, because of obviously the sort of the diminishing returns of journalism nowadays, there's also means there's fewer journalists to do this as well. And as such, I suppose that kind of means that it can't just be down to us to be doing the heavy lifting in holding these people accountable, like as great as that would be. And everybody is stretched, everybody's overworked, there's not enough money either. So as to return to sort of the point I was making earlier about there being a need for systemic change, at the same time I think it's probably a little bit too individualistic to think it can be journalists doing a lot of this. It has to be a whole industry effort, I think, at the end of the day.
Oh God, yeah.
The only individuals to blame are the billionaires. Eat the rich.
Period. I was gonna say.
By the way, I just googled Iggy Pop. Yeah, I did not know all of that, so thank you for pointing that out, Sean.
I ran Six Music social media accounts for 4 years, so right. I got it pointed out pretty much every week that we had a new show out.
Yeah, I did not know that until just now. So there we go.
He wrote about it in his book, literally. Like, that's how people know about it.
I mean, that's another thing. This is another thing that I'm not.
For anyone that's unaware of what we're referring to, that Iggy Pop talked about a relationship, I think it was, with the
I still
teenage
remember the lyrics.
groupie.
There is a song about it.
So yeah,
I think the lines were, "I slept with Sable when she was 13. Her parents were too rich to do anything." That's from the song "Look Away."
Oh my God! What the fuck?
I've never forgotten those.
But then the thing is this. We've just seen the TV show Priscilla being advertised. I've not watched it yet, but she was 14 when her and Elvis got together, and it's like, at what point? I want to talk to somebody from that era to understand, because it's horrific, and I 100% disagree, but I want to talk to somebody from that era, like how like how do you know what I mean? Because I want to know, was this normalized? Like, was this something that was, because I don't fully understand how that happened, and it because they have no shame when they talk about it, any of the classic rock stars.
Yeah,
So
I was
that
going to
to me
bring that
says
up
it was
earlier,
really
because
normalised.
especially with the way we sort of groupie culture was so entrenched and so normalised, and now how different it is now, because then obviously we sort of recognize it for what it is now, and that gets talked about in a completely different way now.
Yeah, when I think of my grandma, like she got married, the goal was to get married at 16.
Wow.
So she was married at 16. No, we got married. She was like, met my granddad at 15. I think he was 16 or something. And then they had kids.
Yeah.
Or he might have been 18. I can't remember, but it was like, I think it was so normalised.
Well, my mum was 19 and my dad was 27, so like it was normalised even back in the 80s.
Like, I think there was a lot more normalisation of like, especially even raising, and for the sake of ease right now, I'm going to say raising young women, it was normalised that, you know, you have to start a family. We're buying you a easy cook oven from a young age and you have to start a family, blah, 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 and move out. By the time you're 18, you definitely can't be living at home, and you can't get a job, and you can't even earn your own salary. You can't have, I think women couldn't have their own credit cards or something till the 90s.
Bank
it was
accounts.
Ridiculous. And so it's bank accounts. So it's like, I just want, and I know I'm not trying to take anything away, but I think sometimes with all of these issues, then it's not that they're black and white, but it's not until we understand the grey that we can get to the bottom of why it's happening or why it happened, and therefore how we can make change. But I think you get frowned upon when you talk about the grey.
Hi there, it's Emma here. I'm gate crashing the podcast to quickly tell you about the Drowned in Sound newsletter. Every Wednesday, I invite myself into your inbox, with permission, of course, to share opinion writing and resources, tell you about cool things that you should be involved in within the world of music, activism, etc. I also bring track of the week and a little bit of hopeful news for you, because we all know that the news cycle can be grim at the best of times. Drowned in Sound newsletter every Wednesday in your inbox. Sign up now.
All I can do is speak on what I've seen, what I've heard, there are bands within this scene that have had what I know for a fact to be false allegations. There are bands who have had false allegations, because people get caught up in the drama, the excitement of the post. I don't know what it is, and I'm not saying that all allegations could be false. That's not what I'm saying, because I believe in believing people. However, I also know that there are bands who that have been able to pay their way out of allegations, and from before Yasmin or Emma's time. Like, there are bands who categorically, I know for a fact, I know people that were there, and I know that it has been ignored by people. And I think it's a very difficult, because it's asking people to have trial by media, and it's asking people to have trial by fans and fan input. Like, fans love to get behind a hate campaign. They love it. And I think we have to be really, really careful with it personally, how we deal with such serious things. And I think when it comes to someone like, say, Marilyn Manson, all I had to do, I can't sit here and say I know for a fact, because I don't know the people involved, and I don't know whether it's true or false. But the thing I do know for a fact is what was written in his book.
In his own words.
In his own words.
In his own words.
He pressed yes, less print. And I know that actually where I'm at today in 2025, that's too much for me. So I don't want to support him. However, there are, how do we...
And that's before, but that's also before all the Nazi elements of like, and the anti-Semitism, which at a time when we're told anti-Semitism is at record highs. Like, there was a thing on Laura Kunsberg on the BBC this morning, and she asked the education secretary whether Bob Vylan's show should be cancelled in Manchester. And I don't think what Bob Vylan said on stage at Glastonbury was at all anything that I would want to back or associate myself with. It was perpetuating a cycle of violence, which, to be anti-war is to be anti-perpetuating a cycle of violence. I'm not going to defend what they said, but I'm also don't think I would ever hear Laura Kunsberg ask whether Disturbed show should be cancelled because he signed a literal bomb that was going to be sent to kill people. Same bombs that had Billie Eilish's name written on them. I don't think it was him that wrote Billie Eilish's name. And it's like there's a complete like imbalance of how power holds and the establishment holds people to account. And I think that I don't think it's the journalist's job to constantly throw themselves into the fire.
On that subject, I literally saw just the other day that a Disturbed show in Belgium has been cancelled as a result of David Draymond signing that bomb.
I saw that article, which is, I think you're right. And I think we're seeing a lot of, I mean, when it comes to war and things, I think we're seeing a lot of contradiction. Genocide, not war. When we're coming to genocide, I think we're seeing a lot of contradiction in the UK with protests and all sorts. But that's a topic for a different day that I'm probably not intelligent enough to speak on.
We're in a really interesting point right now because, like, we've spoken about how media has, especially traditional media, has lost its power and its weight because of how oversaturated things are now, and that the power is in the hands of the people. But it's quite hard because that power is now, people are narcissistic and they're selfish, and nobody loves telling themselves that they're right more than everybody. People love to be right. They love to be right. And there's this culture online, and people dumb it down to cancel culture, but I hate that. I think we should call it out for what it is. There is this narcissistic culture online that treats being morally right and doing the right thing as a contest, as a pissing contest, and it's made being a good person feel impossible and feel like this impossible standard. So it means as well that people now leer to the far right, because what the right has that the left doesn't is no standards. You can be the worst person imaginable and the far right will still support you. You could be a genuinely good person and have made one mistake once in your life, like forgot to put rubbish in the bin, and you'd get cancelled by the left. And I think the left's impossible standards are cannibalizing it alive, and that comes into play when it comes to music and holding people accountable and doing the right thing. Because if you, I don't know, if you say something, for example, if we were to, and it's this grey area, if we were to try and talk about the nuance of the grey area when it comes to, bands who've been accused and proved that they didn't do it, bands that haven't been accused but have definitely had some dodgy behaviour in their own words, and like, no, they didn't legally get charged, but, they, in their own words, said in a article or a book or whatever that they did it. If we were to talk about this grey area, people immediately individualise the situation and they say, well, why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you speaking out? Why haven't you tweeted about this? Instead of looking at the wider picture and seeing like what infrastructures are in place in the media industry and, for example, the music industry that allow these people and enable these people to do these things. And instead we individualise it so much because we can't, it's harder to point blame at an entire industry and change that because it takes work, but instead it's easier and lazier to just sit online and point the finger at other people and feel like you're doing something and call yourself an activist because you called somebody else a bad person for not speaking on something they had no idea about. It's so much easier, and it's lazy activism, and it's cannibalizing the left, and it's cannibalizing the actual work that can be done. Because you know what, and this is not to be that bitch, me and Sophie have said no to a lot of things. Me and Sophie have said we don't want to work with these people. We know that they're dodgy. Our friends have told us, hey, this guy was really weird with me, but obviously I can't come out about it because he's got a lot of money and a lot of power. And me and Sophie have gone, cool, we won't work with him. I haven't then gone on Twitter and gone, by the way, guys, today I found out that this band was really dodgy and I didn't work with them. Cheer for me. Because that would be narcissistic and selfish. And I think people lack critical thinking skills, especially in the era of lazy AI. People lack critical thinking skills. They lack the skills to contextualize the grey area of things and understand that, oh, well, this person, I could just tweet tomorrow, Sophie pushed me down a flight of stairs and called me a slur, and people would believe it until do you know what I mean? Like, there's got to be there is that grey area of, like, I could just say anything and people could and would believe it without actually, like, providing anything. But in the same way, it's like, I don't know, I think there is definitely, I think the way that online pissing contest culture has cannibalized actual accountability, and it's getting harder and harder. But I saw this video recently, and this might be the positive to this, because it's been quite a lot. Sorry for being a cynical bitch. I saw a video that was like, AI is getting so realistic that we're not going to know what's real. We're not going to go what's right and wrong, and people are just going to start putting their phones down. And I was like, that's so true. Like, you're not going to know if that video of Jake Paul at Pride is real or not. You're not going to know if that video of Will Smith eating spaghetti is real or not. And it's going to get so real that people aren't going to engage with it anymore, because past a certain point when it becomes too much and people get too overwhelmed, they don't engage, they just shut off. It's like a mental thing where you get so overwhelmed, you're just like, I'm just going to shut off, I'm just going to put my phone down and not bother. And I think it'll get to that point where people will just disengage completely, like completely just shut off and go, cool, putting my phone down, not even going to bother, not even going to, boom, have some fresh air outside, think about what's morally right and wrong inside themselves and come to that conclusion, rather than looking for the internet to tell them what to do. That was such a tangent. That was such a tangent.
I've got two things to add, Yasmin, two examples that I think that back up what you've just said. Number one, I interviewed one of the organisers of Rock Against Racism. If anyone doesn't know what that is, it's when there was a massive rise of racism in the UK, and I believe it was in the 1970s, but I might be wrong.
It was a reaction to Eric Clapton as well, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a reaction to Eric Clapton and where David Bowie was at the time as well, and David Bowie apologised, but they created these gigs and people came together to be anti-racist. And one of the things he said to me, and it really stuck in my head, was some of those people probably were anti-this, anti-that, hated this group, hated that group. But the one thing we all agreed on was that we were against racism, and that's what we were there for. And we stood shoulder to shoulder, even though that person might be a bit misogynistic, that person. And he said the problem with the left, as to what Yasmin is saying, we can't decide. We keep just trying to cancel everybody on the left. So the people that are in your team, like, we're not even getting 10% progress because we're expecting perfection. And this, I might be like, we've had people trying to cancel us because we interviewed TX2. Do you know? Have you heard of TX2? He's an artist, or I don't know pronouns, but I think it's he, him. He's an artist, LGBTQ plus, who did a song that went very viral on TikTok, and he rage baits people. And people just tried to cancel him, and they tried to cancel us because we spoke to him about, they tried to make out he was transphobic and blah, blah, all these things. The other one is, I recently saw an artist, can I say this? Because I want to see if anyone knows any different.
Sure.
All right. Take this out, because I really don't want to...
I'm going to be Sophie's PR now. Go on, say it.
I will... All right. It's like, show your hands. I had heard time and time again that Palais Royale were transphobic. And so I decided to look into it, because I was like, what is the story? What is the story here? This is terrible. But people have been saying it all over social media. People message you and say it. And I looked it up, and one of the members had used a word that he didn't know the meaning of. And when he was told it's an unacceptable word, he apologised and said, I'm really sorry. I thought that was... And it's like, but now this rumour has become bigger than the incident. And so I just think if we continue the way we're going, every band's going to end up, no one's perfect. We're looking for perfection. I don't even know what my point
and then
was
it
there
sways
at the end.
people to the right so heavily, because
Yeah,
now you see so much
exactly.
right wing in rock, and it's like, it's actually easier and more profitable to be right wing in metal. Like, it's so much easier. Bands are lazy, they don't want to do the work. And I know it seems like we should, immediately my brain is like, but we should make them do the work. And it's like, I'm realistic. I know that progress does not come by people just waking up and being left. Like, sometimes you have to drag people over the way and like convince them and kind of lead them hand in hand, because I'm realistic about how activism actually works. But I think the internet and social media has made people lazy in their activism, and it's meant that people, like, they just expect perfection all the time, and they're like, well, I wouldn't do this, so why are you? And it's like, well, not everybody has been born into the same circumstances. People are born into bigotry, and they have to unlearn that, and I think we need to accept that. But also, I was going to say, I don't think it's fair, this is a random tangent I'm going to go on, I don't think it's fair that journalists are cancelled for interviewing artists. I think that's stupid. Oh, you interviewed this problematic artist. That's my fucking job. Hello? Wee woo. Yep. I'm clocking into work, girl. I'm not saying you need to like or dislike this artist. I'm finding out what they did,
Yeah,
so
it's not
you
an
can decide.
endorsement.
That's my job.
Exactly.
Girl.
Find out the details.
Girl, it's my job. I'm here to find out what they did, so you can decide whether you like them or not. I'm not supporting him or not supporting him. I'm just here to do my job. I can never fathom that when people are like, Yasmin is problematic because they interviewed this person. Yeah, I'm doing my job.
And I'll tell you another one to add to yours, Yasmin. If I see, and I might get cancelled for saying this, who knows, because we know how cancel culture works now.
Gag.
If I see one more festival poster with all the men removed, I'm going to fucking rip the little shreds of hair that I have left out of my head. Because it's like, there are so many parts to this. And it just goes along to what we've been talking about. And I think that's another lazy journalist thing that seems to be happening a lot at the moment, because there was a year where we saw it happen at Reading and Leeds, and it was actually a year that had some of the highest rates of LGBTQ plus and black performers as well.
Yeah, it pissed me off that people took like black men off the lineup to be like, but what about the women?
All they focused on was women, and then also,
and it made me sad.
It's a festival. They've got to. If I put on a festival tomorrow, in fact, if that's the way it is, then why isn't Decolonise Festival the same size as Download Festival? And it's because you buy tickets according to who's the biggest artist. And so if labels are investing their money into men, and then those men headline festivals, the problem doesn't lie with the festival. The problem lies with the labels who are investing and creating.
No one holds a label accountable, girl.
Nobody does the research.
No one wants to call the labels out. The day that a label is called out, oh my God, I'll pop a bottle of champagne open.
I think the thing that I've always said to people is that, like, while gender balances on lineups as well is a relevant issue. It's such a relevant issue, but it's also not just an issue. It's also a symptom of a wider problem. If it says something that only like all male acts of a certain size are getting this far and this far, then obviously, you know, there's more money being thrown at them, and you've also got to sort of ask the questions of the listeners as well, as to what are you making sure that is this all you're listening to, or are you actually making an effort to find the work of really, really talented women and queer people of color, etc., or it should be just there. It should you just have it in your playlist anyway. And I suppose the other thing as well is that to rewind on your over the previous point, which I think has some relevance to it, because if there is somebody with allegations on a festival lineup, and then you then start pointing the finger at other bands on that lineup who they probably didn't know that the person with allegations on that lineup was going to be on that lineup as well. I do sort of ask the question of, like, where is it that you end up drawing the line? Because you toured with this person, because you're associated with this person, who associated with this person, who associated with a potential abuser. You could just keep going and going and going until you've cancelled absolutely everybody.
People just like to individualise problems instead of pointing the finger because they're lazy activists, and it's in the same way that, like, people look at a lineup and they go, oh, there's like not enough women, but they don't actually look like, oh, there's like not enough black women, there's not enough queer women, there's no nuance, there's no like actual kind of like depth to it. It's just so surface level, and I think the internet has made people lazy in their activism and in their research and in their consumerism. That's my high horse that I'm on today.
Can I disagree with you guys for the first time today?
Oh yes, please, let's go.
So
get your gloves.
No, so the fine. One thing I would say is that I think that those posters made real a problem that people weren't even conscious of. I think the consistency of it shows a lack of change, but I actually think it's not about the headliners. A festival is often 300 artists, and when promoters make a decision of who they book, it's often down to the rosters of the major booking agents who have the acts on the main stage. That tends to be how a lot of the smaller stages get booked, and that shows a lack of investment in the future from booking agents. And festivals can change that by booking artists. Like, if you book a festival, your job is to spend all year trying to find the best music in the world right now to be at your event, and most of it won't have an audience. By the time you book it and you put 50,000, 100,000 tickets on sale, people can go and dive into all the artists they don't know on that lineup, and that will build an audience for those artists. So yeah, those posters, they are annoying, and I completely agree on all the other points you raised, But I think that actually it's the lower parts of the festival lineup. Like, there are very few slots where it makes that much of a difference if to ticket sales as to who's booked. So it's the slots where you can actually bring people and make things feel normal. Like, it shouldn't seem abnormal to see women playing on stage at a rock or metal festival.
Exactly.
And I think that's the bit that needs to change.
Well, when you look at a festival poster, I guess the reason I was saying it is because when you look at a festival poster, the headliners are the big names, right? They're the ones with the money. They're the ones. When you get to the smaller, and I agree, when the first time when it came out and happened, it was like, wow, that is huge. But I feel like what's happening now is we're seeing it done time and time again for clicks online. And I feel like people are trying to utilise that. For example, a festival that often has been called out for multiple reasons, Download Festival. I cannot explain how hard, and I will name check them, Jenny and Danica, who work as part of the festival, how hard they have worked to build the village, which it's not on the main poster. But they've had every type of representation you can ever imagine, and brought so many bands in to start off at that entry level. And Download is a festival that people keep trying to cancel. And it's like, they, out of all the festivals, are working so actively hard. And I think one of the things, and I'm speaking for Yasmin here, I think we're just sick of online culture and people calling people out. And I think that's why we're saying it, because it's like, I was called out for being I was accused of culturally appropriating blackness by
Sophie's black.
Somebody who also wasn't black, by the way.
Sophie's black. Just for context.
Well, I'm black
just for
mixed.
anyone listening and not watching.
But Sophie,
I'm black mixed, and I was telling a story about how someone said a black woman will never make it in rock, but instead the part they took from that was the fact that I'd repeated a story in which I was called black, and then accused me of culturally appropriating blackness. And it's
in the same way that someone might take the conversation we just had and say Sophie K hates to see representation on festival lineups and hates when the lack of women is pointed out on festival lineups. And I don't think you hate that, because you are a woman and B, you go to festivals. So I think you'd actually like to see more of that. But it's more that I think what Sophie's trying to say.
Yeah, also, it's like when I said I disagree, I don't think I disagreed very much.
But I hear where you were coming from, and I think it's important to have that conversation.
You know what? When it first happened, I think it was important because that conversation hadn't been had. That conversation is being continued to be had and still being had in the background, and also progress is now being made. But I guess people don't see that progress, so it's easy to shout about it online and say, "Well, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that?" And I think we sometimes. We're now in this age of like we pick apart everything. Like, I do think what Sophie's trying to say is we need to celebrate the positives. Like, yes, there probably still isn't enough women on this lineup.
So
There probably still isn't enough women on this lineup, but there are more queer people. There are more people of colour. Yeah, there probably isn't enough like disabled people on this lineup, but there is this and there is that. And it's like we if we start to cannibalise and pick everything apart, we lose sight of the bigger picture. But I do agree all festivals can absolutely include more women, more queer people, more people of colour, all the diverse groups. It literally does not affect them if it's like one of the opening bands on the smallest stage. Like, they need someone to perform. They don't give a fuck who. No, they don't care. They're more focused on the headliners, so they don't care who's there. And that's what matters. Like, people are going to care, though. The people who were camping in the morning, who were waking up early. And I will say as well, to Download, District X has done absolute
District X, I don't want to spoil the village,
yeah, they've done
District
bits
X
to actually diversify and make sure that downloaders, people who are coming to the festival and spending 5 days from the moment they get there, set up their tent, and the 2 days they're there and they're not actually at the festival, are seeing diverse people. Because it's us, it's then the kids people, the like people who dress up in costumes and dance for the kids, it's then the rock fit people, it's then the yoga, it's then the bingo, it's the DJs, it's the drag performers, and they all look completely different. It's the bands performing. Like, there's always stuff going on. And I think that's part of it, like creating that culture in that space and setting a standard of like, it's not just about who's on the stage at the festival, it's also about the people who are in our community and uplifting them. And I will give Danica and Jenny credit that they do uplift their community incredibly. And I don't think that Download would be as diverse as it is in the village without them.
Right. we're about to hit 90 minutes, and I was planning for this to be about 45 minutes to an hour.
Sorry.
So
No, and
sorry.
I could-
This
We
is
like
what
to
you
talk.
get.
We like to talk.
I was being more sorry for taking up so much of your guys' time, because I could happily talk for another hour. But I think we should probably wrap. And I guess there's two things I wanted to say. One was I started reading this great book at the moment called The Persuaders, which I think talks a lot. I think AOC has been referencing the book. I'll drop it in the description of the show because it's really interesting, but a lot of it is around exactly what you were saying about how the right can align in their hate, and on the left we constantly try and we have to be 90% in agreement with someone to be on the same side of an argument of them. And I think that the book talks a lot about how you can be alongside someone you agree 25% with or 50% with, and not having to constantly disentangle people disentangle themselves from movements because of one or two people in a movement. And I think the right do a great job at pointing out the 1% in a movement, and everyone starts to take a step back from being as engaged in pushing for progress. So I think there's that. And I guess the thing I wanted to kind of end on was...
It's your words of wisdom.
No, it's your words of wisdom. How do we shift the system? How do we upgrade the system we're in? Because I feel like that's been the recurring topic throughout this episode. In the previous episode with Eliza Hatch from Cheer Up Love, she really drove home how the patriarchy is bad for men. And I think all of the things that are broken in the system is bad for everyone. And I guess if you have final thoughts on what are the changes going forward that you'd like to see, obviously you just talked brilliantly about what Download are doing and outside of their main festivals that's making change. And for instance, there's things like CISA, CIISA, which is coming in, which will allow people to report as freelancers. So I was rambling to give you guys a little bit of time to think about what you might want to say. But how do we fix the system?
Words of wisdom, this is our jam, Yasmin.
I know. I was going to say, for me, I guess, I've spoken a lot about how there's been this shift and now the consumer is the one who controls the media. And I guess that's always been the way, but especially with social media now. I think it's so easy to point the finger at other people, to blame everything else and individualized situations. Personal accountability and looking inwards is so important. Genuinely ask yourself, is this thing as serious as I think it is? Is it as deep as I think it is? Do I need to sit and argue with strangers on the internet over it? Or how can I actually be productive about this thing? And I had to have this conversation with myself when I first met Sophie, because Sophie was like, why do you cancel things that don't matter? And I was like, I don't know. And I had a conversation with myself, and it was just because I didn't know where to point the blame. And I had to really ask myself, what positive change and what actual change am I making in the industry? And instead of going online and being like, fuck this, fuck that, I actually took a step back and put the work into the industry. And I've seen the changes that I've made. I've seen the impact that I've made, and I'm really proud of that. And I can say confidently that I didn't have to go on Twitter and talk about that. So I think for consumers and for people, it's more about taking a step back and reflecting on what you can do personally. What content do you engage with? What people are you uplifting in your spaces? Oh, you want to see more actual journalists and actual interviewers? Okay, start following them and supporting them and uplifting them in the space. You want to see more bands that look like this in this space? You need to actually start listening. Everybody loves to scream about representation and diversity, but they don't actually listen or support anyone who is diverse. They love to scream about it. Let me see your For You page, because I can promise you your algorithm will call you out. My liked songs on Spotify are from everybody, okay? I don't discriminate. I listen to everybody, and I think it starts from each of us for our own individual personal accountability and what we actually do. And ask yourself, is it really that deep? Are you really going to lose sleep tomorrow over this? And if you are, what can you productively do about it? What can we do that is productive? What impact can you actually make?
Yasmin, you stole my words of wisdom, but I'm going to I'll paraphrase. Just it's the same brain issue that we have. What I would say is the one thing that I think we're seeing time and time again is everything is about the money. Everything is following money. So make sure you're putting your money in the places that you believe in.
Yeah.
So it's about supporting journalists, real journalism. Go out. When was the last time you bought a magazine? Go out, buy magazines. Start putting on the radio.
When was the last time you treated yourself to a magazine?
Exactly. Yes. Right? It's such a treat. Buy magazines, sit down and read it. You're going to enjoy it more than you think. Go and listen to podcasts. Go and listen to the radio. Everyone likes to say radio's dying, but it's actually doing seriously well right now, but there's always more people. And put your money where your mouth is, support the things, and stop being negative. Stop trying to call people out, because all you're doing is being arrogant and trying to one up people. Like, pick and choose your battles, because trying to call Yasmin and I out for XYZ because we said something slightly wrong, is that really what you think the battle with the world is right now?
Yeah, does that really help the cause? If we're fighting the same cause, and I've said something that's worded terribly, you can just privately message me instead of calling me out. And people have, you know what, since we started saying that on the podcast, people will privately message us and go, hey, I don't know if you know, but like the way you said this came off like this, and I was like, I'm so sorry, I actually meant it like this, and we have a conversation. Like, I'm not gonna argue with you or disagree with you or ignore you. I'm just gonna speak quite honestly to you, and that's fine. And I'd prefer that than people just, I think call out culture at the moment is so egotistical and self-absorbed, and it's completely lost its original meaning of holding people accountable. So let's hold ourselves accountable first, and then we can start holding other people accountable.
Finally, my last point that I was going to say is that an active decision that I have chosen to take is I am removing all of those things that I think we've learnt in our language from Me Too, from Black Lives Matter, of I want to remove men suck, men are this, men are that. I want to remove white people are this, white people are that. I'm trying to remove that because I think it can do damage to those groups. And I don't think vilifying somebody else makes you better. And I get it, it's a way of processing anger, but vilifying another group isn't the way forward in my view. And I can expand on that on another day if you want me to. I can see
we have been yapping way too much.
It's dehumanizing the group as well, isn't it? As soon as you cluster someone because of their identity, you're like removing their individualism, which I know is like you're suggesting that all people that are one thing are the same, and like that is bigotry. And like it is.
And I think if you can make fun, like there's things about, I don't know, seasoning food or whatever that's funny on social or whatever, but
that's when people are in on the joke.
I won't walk around accusing saying every white person is racist or whatever. I don't want to live my life that way.
Oh, you have a white dog. I'd hope you're not bullying your goddamn white dogs.
I mean, he deserves it, but yeah.
Leave Wilson alone, please.
He hates black dogs. It's a thing. What were you going to say, Emma?
Something that I've been thinking about, because like something that somebody brought up to me when I was interviewing them is somebody told me that there's actually not much progress that you can make by shouting at somebody. People don't take things in if they feel like someone is coming at them with their hacks up, and that's something that I've like thought about a lot, because I don't think that necessarily is the way to enact positive change. I think what you can do, I think, is it is better to actually approach somebody with in a calmer manner and actually open it up and have a conversation about it, as you said. But I think that's also why I think positivity is such an eye-catching thing. It's like when I remember speaking to Nova Twins about this, because I always noticed that they have sort of approached their manner of change with their way of encouraging change through positivity. Like with the MOBA wars, they could have gone, "Oi, MOBAs, why have you not got a rock category? Do you see what you're doing?" And then they went, "No, here's an idea for you. Have you thought about?" And that just made so much sense.
Yeah,
like, there's so much that you can actually do that's positive, actually inviting somebody in rather than pushing them away.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like we should be entering the age. We should be entering the age of calling people in, not calling people out. Like, come into our movement, get your head around what we're talking about, and it will make so much difference.
Sometimes we have business meetings about the podcast, and we said we want to be business. We want to be like Pride, like that. That's our goal going forward. It's everyone's welcome, and it's a fun party, and we're opening it up. And I think that's the way we make change in the scene.
Yeah,
and that's as individuals.
Thing, like, when you look at, especially, I feel like maybe it's an excessive genuine to look at right-wing movements. I don't feel like they have the same level of joy around like something as you would at Pride, as something like that, which is about sort of celebrating yourself and things like that. And I think there's a lot that can be said, like, especially when it comes to music as well, you know, like there is so much amazing music out there, and much amazing music, especially made by marginalized groups, that more people deserves to hear. And that's kind of like where I like to operate from, in terms of like especially with new bands that I talk about and stuff like that as well. I just sort of just think everybody needs to know who this band are. And so if you can come from that place, and I think that can actually go a lot further.